Hi guys, glad to have you here. This is a very specific video. I'm thinking about my subject matter. I'm like, yeah, this is just very pinpointed in terms of the topic, and it is these makeup blending sponges, but specifically several have come out very recently that have this sort of wedge shape happening, the flat side, and the Real Techniques one, you know, we know has been around for years now, but very recently I've picked up ones from Tarte, from Eco Tools, from NYX, and they all are kind of following that design, but there are some very subtle differences. And none of these sponges that I'm going to talk about today, I think, are total duds. I think they're all usable. There's not like some super huge glaring problem about one that makes it like, you know, oh, it's hard as a rock or it's completely falling apart. You know, I'm not running into that kind of problem. It's just some very specific little aspects of them that might make you prefer one over the other. Definitely makes me prefer one over the other. So the Real Techniques sponge, if you're just buying one, I think it's like around $6.99 just for this one sponge. And like I said, this was kind of the pioneer in terms of this shape. A lot of people like it, and I know I liked it for having this flat side because I felt like I could really easily pat in foundation. I think that flat edge can multitask very well if you like to bake and really lay down some powder with that side. And then you've got a pointed end over here. And the overall just feel of this sponge, it's very, very soft. Every sponge that I'll be showing you in this video has been, well, freshly cleaned except for the one that I just used in the demo, but therefore they have also been fully saturated with water and wrung out completely. So you're seeing them at their maximum squishiness and size here. All of the other sponges I'm going to talk about really have a similar feel to the Real Techniques. It's a very soft type of foam. I mean, it's just as soft as you could possibly want. I even feel like it's a little bit different than the Beauty Blender. The Beauty Blender I still feel is very soft, but it's almost got a slight bit more texture to the touch. It's like the sponge itself feels just a hair more porous, maybe might be the word, and these are very, very soft. So I like my Real Techniques sponge, been using it for years. It's been definitely a favorite. Now very recently, Tarte has come out with their blending sponge, and I think they've named it the Quickie Sponge. They came out with something that was a little bit different shaped, by the way. It looked like this, and I don't know if they decided that was not a good thing because they have very recently released one that is like identical practically to the Real Techniques sponge. I mean, in terms of similarities, it does blow up to be roughly the same size. There's a pointed tip on both ends of each of these. One difference I've noticed is that the slant here might be a bit steeper on the Tarte sponge and just a little bit more surface area right there. But really, I mean, it feels like it's made out of the exact same material. If I was blindfolded, I'm not sure I would know the difference just to squeeze these. One thing I'm not loving about the Tarte is that this little end right here has become very thin, and I noticed that from the start, and then after a couple of cleanings I could see some little bits starting to actually come off there, and you can just see that the cut of the sponge has something to do with that. It's very thin, the material right there, whereas with the Real Techniques they've kept it a bit thicker toward the top. So this one's going to cost you $16, so about $10 more, and I mean, I feel like they are doing the exact same thing. Only, like I said, I think the Tarte might be a bit more flimsy. So then the next one coming on the scene here is from Eco Tools, and I could not find online where these are being sold currently. I bought mine in a Walmart store, and I don't think they were over $10, and it is a duo. And here you've once again got the slanted side to your sponge, but you've got then a shorter slant on the other side, and then with that they're giving you a downsized like a mini version of that, and it's the same sort of proportions. And then your very, very end actually does not come to an exact point, which is probably for the best for durability, because like I said, this end, you know, getting a little flimsy there. Here they do give you this sort of cut right across the top. So that is definitely a difference between these and, let's say, the Real Techniques, because if you like to get a very, you know, distinct contour, let's say, a real line going there and then blend it out, you know, you can do that with these. This one has a nice softness to it. Again, reminds me very much of whatever the Real Techniques or the Tarte is made of. It's just so, so soft and squishy. And again, these have been fully saturated under the sink and then wrung out completely. The smaller size though is a little bit more firm, and it's like it's a slightly more dense texture of sponge here. And just because it's smaller doesn't mean it has to be firmer, because I'm thinking about like how insanely soft my Beauty Blender Micro Mini, for example, is. Super small but super soft sponge, and this one is just rather stiff. I've used these for different purposes. I've used this one, you know, overall blending out foundation, and then taken this one and tried to use that more for concealer, but frankly I just feel like it's too stiff around the eye area. There's not enough flexibility there. When I'm going to blend out concealer, like I've got a little bit of a deep set area there, and it's not always easy to get into, and I don't think this made it easier. Frankly, there's more flexibility and more, you know, movement, mobility with this sponge to be able to get around my inner corner than there is with the smaller one. I could see this sponge maybe applying some cream contour and blending that out, but it's borderline just a little too stiff for my liking for that, and even a bit stiff for applying or bouncing in a cream blush. You know, I think about the Beauty Blender blusher. That's an extremely soft sponge. It's a smallish sponge, but it's very, very nice and soft. So I guess my bottom line with the EcoTools Duo is that this little guy isn't really doing anything that this one can't do. And different folks out there might come up with different ideas, different preferences, or reason why they love this one, let's say. But for me, I'm not sure I really see the value in the smaller size. And as far as this size goes, I do enjoy the aspect, the rounded bottom here, because I've been liking just the feeling and the effect I get from actually tapping in and bouncing in the foundation from the butt end, you know, of a Beauty Blender. Just the classic Beauty Blender, that's an element of that sponge that I really like, and that's something that you don't get with your Real Techniques sponge. I feel like I almost end up doing a bit more of a swiping motion with that, just because I use a lot of the flat side, or if I'm using the total opposite side, I kind of scrunch it around a little bit. So I do like having that rounded bottom here. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on needing two flat edges to the sponge though. Now the next one I want to tell you about is my favorite. I think I like it even better than my Real Techniques sponge, which has been a big front runner for me in terms of sponges for quite some time now. And it's from NYX, and it's the Flawless Finish sponge. And I got this for, I think, between $7 and $8 on Ulta's website. It's a black sponge, and what you're working with here is the rounded bottom, one slanted side, but it's got like this narrow curve toward the top. See that? If you look at it side by side with a Real Techniques sponge, it's coming up just a little bit more precisely, not to a total point, but there's definitely some more taper there. And taking into account that one small detail, I feel like this sponge can do foundation and concealer very effectively, just all in one, all in itself. So this is the one I will be showing you a demo with in this video. But again, the rounded bottom, that gives you a nice ability to tap in the product. Overall size-wise, if you look at these all together, I know this is not a great way to show them, but there's not one of these sponges that's totally like dwarfing the others. You know, they're all kind of in the same ballpark size-wise. But the feel of this is super duper soft, feels just like the Real Techniques sponge to me and the other sponges I've mentioned outside of the smaller of the two EcoTools sponges. And I wanted to show you this applying a product that I thought really benefits from a sponge application. So I use my Maybelline Dream Velvet Soft Matte Hydrating Foundation, wear this in the shade Nude, and I just think that foundation looks the best and the most natural, yet it still has good coverage when applied with a Beauty Blender sponge. So I patch it all over my skin, and then I use that rounded butt end of this, but I don't know why I keep calling it butt end, but that's just, you know, that's what it is to me. And then I just bounce the product in, and I really like the effect of using a rounded end to actually get that foundation applied. So that gets blended in very effectively, I feel like, all over my face. And then I want to show you how I use this also for concealer, and I feel so satisfied with the way it blends it in. So I've got my Anastasia concealer. That's the one I reached for today. I dab that around my under eye area, get it right there in my inner corners, also around my nose. And then I put my finger right on the flat side of this sponge, and I'm going to make use of that rounded and very nicely tapered end to get right on the inner part of my eye. And this sponge does this better than any full-sized blender sponge that I have used. If you're trying to keep from pulling in a micro mini or a tiny sponge of some sort, this one sponge can very effectively get in there, and actually you feel like you're getting every square inch that you would need to reach as far as concealer goes. And same goes for around my nose too. It's like it's just the right size. It's rounded off, it's tapered up so much more than, you know, my Real Techniques sponge is, and I just think it does the best job because it kind of comes out just a little bit. It really reaches the areas where you need to get to. Still love my little like Whisper sponges or my mini Real Techniques sponges, my Beauty Blender Micro Minis. I still think those are quality products and they very lightly and effectively can get around your eye area and blend things out. But I'm just saying, for those of you who are trying to simplify life and find one sponge that really can do it all, this is it, because I'm also going to show you that I use the flat side for baking the area. And this isn't a step that I take every single day, but I'll just show you how it does it. Today, using the Laura Mercier loose powder, just dabbing right into that, and it can very effectively get a large surface area, you know, with the loose powder. And then I leave that on my skin while I do my eyebrows and just dust it away afterward. But I am just so pleased with the application I have gotten with this. I've been experimenting with these different sponges quite a bit, and the NYX just impresses me over and over again. But just to reiterate, it's not that the Real Techniques can't do the job, you know, because that does a good job too. The Tarte one can do the job, although I am a little bit questionable about this sort of flimsy, very like too finely cut tip right there at the end. And the EcoTool sponge is primarily the larger of the two. I think that's usable as well, but this is definitely the one that I have found can tackle my foundation and my concealer all together very easily and quickly, and I'm just a huge fan. So that, my friends, is my little wedge sponge roundup. There's, I'm sure, more sponges from other brands that I haven't even touched yet that also have taken on this kind of a shape, but I certainly have been most impressed with what NYX is doing here, because just the entire shape, the way this is rounded out there, that's something too, because it's not so flat, so it continues to reach. Kind of grip it with your finger right there, and then it just does such a good job of getting around the eye area. I can't get over it. So anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.